Story time. I thought it might be kind of fun to just sort of take some time for the fun of telling a story and for the fun of hearing a story. And also that I thought it might, also just to journal my own personal testimony. I thought also maybe one day somebody will come across it and it might bless them. So, uh-oh. 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 Also, I thought that whenever I go into story, I had a new character, and he's a rapper, and he's a mix master from like the 80s, and he's coming to the future, but he also uses imaginary like record to do his mix mastering. So he goes like so I'll start doing that, and you'll know I've gone into my mix master from the 80s to tell my story. So, all right, here he is. I don't have a name for him yet. We'll come up with something. So, it was a Christmas. Don't remember which one. I'll never be able to remember which one. Have no idea how old I was. But I remember that my aunt and uncle were spending the night on Christmas Eve. So the way we did Christmas was we had this big living room. I grew up in a place called Crescent Hill. And if it sounds like a classic American neighborhood, where a kid would grow up just like the Wonder Years, that's it. That is what it is. And very hilly area. It lived up to its name. And I remember there was a water tower you could see. It was off in the distance. When you're a kid, landmarks like that have an effect on you. Like somewhere out there's a tower. I want to go see that, And to this day, it was my grandmother's house. The family doesn't own it anymore, so I wouldn't go up on their porch and try to look out. But the last time I was there, the tower being missing still bothers me. They eventually tore it down back in the 80s, when the Mixmaster was popular. And I don't know, it was still like something was missing, Anyway, like I said, I'm going to take my time with this. I'm just doing this kind of because I thought it might be fun to talk through. So gotta turn this off and get my coffee. Okay, so I may even go to some of these places and just record them. Might be kind of interesting. Look at that. So it was one Christmas. They were spending the night. We would put a big, so see the entrance to the kitchen there? It was double the size of that. And they'd put a sheet over it. And I'd have to wait till the family got to the house. And there was a Christmas party the night before, so they're all sleeping late. I'm up early, because I was up all night long trying to sleep, because I thought that Santa Claus knew I was awake. So I tried to sleep, never did fall asleep. And I was excited because my aunt and uncle were there. So they were going to be there in the morning. And I probably had other thoughts about this prior to this event, but I heard something move in the living room. I thought it was in the living room. Of course, it was probably 2, 3 in the morning, who knows, or at least I thought it was. And I remember just thinking, I bet that's my uncle. I bet that's my uncle doing that. He's in there setting up the gifts. And I surely probably had some doubts going into it. I don't remember anybody ever telling me that Santa Claus was a myth. I just thought that, I was starting to have doubts. And we had another thing I remember where we would go on Halloween. They would take me to the front of the house and scream, "Old witch, old witch." And then in the back of the house, I would hear a laugh. And we'd go back there and there'd be candy. They'd say, "Yeah, if you yell for the old witch, she'll come bring candy." And then the next year we would go to the back of the house and yell old witch, saying, hey, we'll try to catch her. We'll go to the back of the house and yell old witch. And they would yell old witch, and then there'd be candy in the front porch. And I remember one year I was like, listen, you all stay in the front and I'm going in the back. And they were like, no, 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 no. And I remember they couldn't give me a good reason, but why that wasn't a good idea. But they said it wouldn't work. But I remember it wasn't that I had become skeptical about the existence of the old witch. I just wanted to catch her. But anyway, so we were, so there in front of my house, okay, you had a hill, and it was so steep that my dad had a lawnmower with a rope tied to it. He had to throw the lawnmower down the hill and pull it up with a rope. And then there'd be a sidewalk, and then another hill, and then the street. And many games and good times were played on those hills. But when you go down the sidewalk, there was this area of dirt on the sidewalk. And it was perpetually muddy. It didn't matter if it was a dry heat, 110 degrees in the summer. I think if I had to theorize about it, it was under shade, and I bet the roots of the tree were keeping it moist. I don't know. Because I think that part of the concrete was coming up out of the ground. And so I think that's what was going on. I really don't know, because I always thought it was weird as a kid that it was always moist there, no matter what. There were a few times when it was dry and it was just dirt. And I don't know, I need to go back and check. It may still be there. It was there my whole life as a kid. Now, why is that important? Well, it's not important except to say that I remember that's where I was when I thought, wait a minute. My dad made up the Santa Claus thing, which of course he didn't, but he perpetuated it. And he also told me about God. Now, you need to back up here a little bit, okay, to know what's happening here. My daughter has asked me some tough questions when she was really young. I remember one time she called me back in the bedroom. My wife said, hey, you got to go back to the bedroom. She wants to ask you a question. So I went back there and she was playing with a toy, and she was looking at the toy. And she goes, how did God make God? It's like, well, if you're not going to get focused, how am I supposed to take you serious, And one day she called me back there, and we were talking about life, and she said, will I die one day? And I did it just like my dad did with me. I said, yep, you're going to die one day. And man, I love my little girls. And she just had this look on her face that just broke my heart, Now, my dad, I remember the day he told me everyone dies, and when he told me that I would die. And I remember feeling the way my daughter looked like she felt. Very deflated. It's all been a great ride to that point. And he said, but don't worry. Now, this is not obviously theologically good, Okay, it's just the best my dad could do. Offer my daughter different comfort, of course. But I didn't try to comfort her. I just tried to tell her the truth. Anyway, my dad said, well, he said, the good news is this. There is a God. And if you're good, one day, you can go to heaven. I was like, all right. And that was good enough for me. Until that summer when I'm running by that dirt patch. Of course, it's muddy as usual. And I'm thinking, well, he was wrong about the Santa Claus thing. I know he's right about this God thing. And I had taken great comfort in the idea that there's a God, I don't die. Like, I don't stop existing. So I went home that day. I'm pretty sure it was that day. And I went up to him and I said, Dad, how do you know there's a God? And he said, well, Travis, he said, can you really afford not to believe? And I was like, huh. I said, okay, I'll chug along and keep believing. And that lasted me till about high school. And I'll wrap the story up here. This part anyway. And I remember getting to high school sometime during that, and I remember going, my dad, I don't know that he's right about this one. Because I really like existing. And I thought, well, okay, if it's important enough that I really want to know if there's a God, because I want to continue existing. I want to know. It's at least that important that I got to know. And he's the only person I knew to go to. So I went back to my dad. And I didn't grow up in the church, okay? And I had a history with Catholicism. Maybe will work its way into the story time eventually. So I went to my dad that day. We were in the driveway. This is a different house in St. Matthews. And I went up to him and I said, Dad, I thought maybe he had, now that I was a little older, had a little more advice, you know, and maybe had developed his understanding differently. My dad's smart, so I expected him to really be able to set me straight. I said, Dad, I want to know, is there a God? How can we know? And he does this thing where he puts his hands together, rubs and goes, well, Travis, gotta ask yourself this. Can you afford not to believe? And I was like, I left thinking, I mean, can we afford to believe? I mean, I can't just believe just because it's important to believe. I'll end with this. Richard Dawkins said that he thought that the problem with believers were that it was a weakness, that they came to belief because it was a weakness, that they wanted to believe in God because they're so afraid of death. My situation was the exact opposite. I don't think he's right about that. I felt he was right in that I wanted there to be a God because it was too important and a terrifying proposition that there wouldn't be. But that drove me to skepticism because it was too important of a question to be answered with the affordability of belief or unbelief. All right. Mixmaster. Ooh, that was